Hi again, everyone. So we're going to take a moment and kind of just get a little taste of what it might look like or feel like, or remind yourself of, I guess, I talk with a lot of people about how to lace their narrative. How do we begin to, and why is it important for us to lace our narrative with the spiritual thread? I think when I was been able to go back and kind of see God or see my understanding of God or spirit in my past where I hadn't, it begins to change my narrative. First of all, it reminds me of my resilience, and it doesn't even necessarily change my narrative. It changes how I speak about it, and it changes how I remember it, which in some weird way, it changes it. But, like most things, everything is already what it is. And I think it's more about a sense of discovery. And so I thought we would just do a little activity, and you might have a pen and paper next to you if you have something like that, or you might even just take this as a moment of being in meditation. You can kind of be comfortable where you're sitting, or if you want to close your eyes or not, that's fine. But what I'd like for you to do is just to take a moment and think about a time or a moment. And this might not even be something that's happened yet. Maybe this is an ideal. But I would like for you to think about a time in which you feel connected to God, and you feel or connected to spirit, or your higher self, or whatever it is. Really think about what is happening in that moment. How are you feeling? What is it? What is telling you that you're like God or higher power or whatever is actually present in that moment? What is it that you're experiencing that assures you that you are connected, that you are held, that you are, whatever, language you want to use, but try to take notice. Maybe think about how you're sitting or how you're positioned, or, did you do some sort of ritual or practice to kind of cause that effect, if you will? Were there things happening outside of yourself, maybe in life or in the room, that was causing you to, that kind of created, if you will, a container or an environment or an opportunity for you to really notice this connection? And feel free to write down some things that make you think of that. Next, what I'll do, I'll give you like a couple of minutes. I feel like we need just a little bit more time to just reflect on again and notice what is happening. What is going on around you, inside you, and about you when you are connected, in alignment, however way you want to say that. Now, we're going to kind of go somewhere else for a second. And what I'd like for you to do is recall a time in your life, and it might even actually be right now, or it could be, something that was a couple weeks ago, or maybe you want to go to a time in your childhood or whatever. But I want you to think of a time in which you recall not being connected with God, not seeing God, maybe even screaming at her or cussing at her, or just feeling alone. Sometimes I think we think of like being in the dark or being in sadness or being, beyond, depressions and things that happen to us, but more of like really feeling like you just cannot, connect with God, with spirit. You cannot connect with yourself, and you just were really struggling. What can you think about and kind of just reflect again, what is going on with you? How does that feel? Like, what are your thought patterns? Maybe think of who is around you, or maybe who isn't around you, what all is kind of playing into this state. And what I'd like for you to do potentially is to try to invite that moment in which you were connected to a higher power or spirit or whatever, try to see if you can see that understanding, that belief, that faith back in that moment, and oftentimes it's not going to look the same, because it's not like, oh, well, usually I pray and I light candles and I do this thing and I just feel like, ooh, I'm there. And that was something that didn't happen, right? Like that was something that you can't really go back and just like, okay, we're going to do this thing in the past, but maybe you can begin to notice, were there things that you were doing, maybe even things that you weren't doing. It might even be good to notice that you weren't doing any of the rituals that you do today. A lot of this is really just taking a moment and taking the time to really explore what already is and beginning to really begin to see if you can see something different or see more of, I think, is really what it comes down to. There's so many like examples in my life, and I know this is just like a little taste, so like we only have a few minutes, but I wanted to give you an idea of how to kind of jump back and forth and things to be thinking about in these moments. I would encourage you to do this with, anytime, and in many different ways. But one of the things for me that I remember growing up in a trailer in a small town in Idaho to a drug addicted father and a codependent mother and such a loving bunch of people. And somewhere along the way, I learned that life was just going to be really fucking hard and it was never going to get better. And you just had to like roll with the punches. I was taught that it was important to remain kind and generous, that no matter how hard life was, there were people that were having an even harder time with it. And I always had something to give or something to offer. And to be honest with you, like much of my life, I saw that as like, I fought it and I bucked against it because I saw it in such a negative kind of scarcity kind of point of view. And now I can kind of look at it from a space of abundance, and I can kind of understand through my adult eyes, or almost more adult eyes, if you will, that actually could be true, right? Like I could use those same words. I might not choose to do that today, but a lot of that was not true. But my understanding of what it means that life is being difficult or life is being hard, what that looks like, and whether I have hope through that, or you know what I mean? Like the relationship with it can begin to change, even though it's like the same thing. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. But I really just wanted to give folks, because it can be such a huge journey. Like I think to really go through this fully, you kind of like have to start in your childhood, work through your whole life to your now. And then even I think it's important to kind of vision and think about what your ideal is when it comes to your spirituality, your spiritual relationship, your connection to yourself and the world around you, and how you feel and animate within that. And so it can be quite the long process. And there's so many things that inform us and tell us who we are, who we aren't, what God is, what God isn't, what is spiritual, what is not. And I think it's just really helpful when we can begin to see how much is really impacting us, so that we don't become created by that which happens to us, but that we can be a co-creator with all of it. I don't know about you, but there's been times in my life when I felt like I was just a product of my environment. I was a product of a rape. I was a product of drug addiction. I was a product, and that like I was just kind of like almost kind of in that victim state of like, and then I felt like I had all these maladaptive, not so cute behaviors that, I could equate to like a rape or the way I grew up or whatever. And I didn't want to, like, I resented that. And once I was able to begin to see that these things happen to me and then start to be a part of how I'm going to create myself in response to these things, rather than just being like, I kind of think of it as like, you get like a rock thrown at something and it chips, right? And instead of like, I don't know, like instead of walking around chipped, I can find a way, to I don't know, just have a different experience with it. So I'll leave it at that. It feels so weird talking at nothing for so long. Not nothing, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Nothing about you all. It's more about me. But thanks for just that little moment in time.